Connie Francis, the voice that defined an era. Her timeless hits like Who's Sorry Now and Stupid Cupid made her a global icon, capturing the hearts of millions across generations. But behind the radiant smile and picture-perfect image was a woman with strong opinions and unforgettable experiences in the music world. Now, at this stage in her life, Connie has finally opened up about the side of the industry she rarely spoke about, the rivalries, the disappointments, and yes, the musicians she could never quite get along with. In a shocking revelation that's taken fans by surprise, Connie didn't hold back when asked about artists she never wanted to share a stage with again. Her candor was both refreshing and brutally honest, a rare peek behind the curtain of an industry known for hiding its tensions beneath polished smiles and public handshakes. Over her remarkable career, Connie worked with, and against, some of the biggest names in the business. While she was admired for her professionalism, not every collaboration ended harmoniously. Some artists challenged her patience, while others clashed with her creative vision. A few, she admits, simply rubbed her the wrong way. As Connie Francis finally sets the record straight, the music world is buzzing once again, not over her chart-topping hits, but over her truth. For someone who spent a lifetime protecting her reputation and her emotions, these rare confessions reveal a depth and boldness that fans have never seen before. Today, we uncover the 6 bands that Connie Francis openly admitted she couldn't stand, and the surprising stories behind each feud that shook the golden age of Connie Francis and the Everly Brothers, 2 of the biggest names in 1950s pop music, were once considered the golden children of the same era. On paper, they represented the very best of American music, clean-cut, melodic, and adored by fans across the world. But behind the scenes, Connie's relationship with the famous duo was anything but harmonious. During the height of her career, Connie and the Everly Brothers often shared recording studios, television stages, and radio appearances. Their success stories ran parallel. She was the queen of heartbreak ballads, while Phil and Don Everly were the princes of perfect vocal harmony. The press loved to pair them together, calling them America's musical siblings. But what fans didn't know was that the chemistry stopped the moment the cameras turned off. In her later interviews, Connie revealed that tension began during a 1960 television special. She recalled that the Everly Brothers, already global sensations, didn't take kindly to being upstaged by a woman. According to her, what started as friendly competition quickly turned into subtle hostility. They were talented, no doubt, she admitted, but they could be arrogant. They didn't like the idea of anyone, especially me, stealing the spotlight. The situation escalated when producers began booking Connie as a solo act for shows the Everly Brothers had expected to headline. She said the brothers made it clear they weren't happy. Rumors circulated that one of them even demanded she be removed from a shared appearance in order to keep the focus on the band. Connie, known for her strong will, refused to back down. "I worked too hard to get where I was," she later said. "I wasn't about to let anyone, not even the Everly Brothers, push me aside." What followed was an icy professional standoff. They performed together on only a few occasions. After that, and even those appearances were described by insiders as awkward and tense. Still, ever the professional, Connie smiled through it all. But years later, when asked if she'd ever reunite with the Everly Brothers, she simply laughed and said, "Let's just say I prefer singing solo." Fans were shocked when she admitted that the Everly Brothers were one of the few acts she truly disliked working with. Yet she didn't speak out of bitterness. Instead, she used the story to shed light on the hidden side of the music industry, where egos often clashed louder than instruments. "People think the industry was all glamour and charm back then," she explained. "But it was competitive, especially for women. You had to fight for your space, and not everyone wanted you to win." Interestingly, as years passed, Connie softened her tone when speaking of the brothers, especially after Don and Phil's passing. "We were all young. she reflected in a 2019 interview. We were chasing success, and sometimes that makes you lose perspective. I still respect what they accomplished. Yet there's no denying that her feud with the Everly Brothers left a mark on her career. A reminder of how even the brightest stars of the golden era had their share of backstage battles. What made Connie different, however, was her courage to tell the truth decades later. She didn't share it to stir controversy, but to show that behind every glamorous hit record was a human story, filled with pride, hurt, and resilience. Music connects us, she once said. But sometimes it divides us, too. And for Connie Francis, that divide with the Everly Brothers would remain one of the most unforgettable chapters of her musical journey. Music. While Connie Francis reigned, supreme as the queen of polished pop ballads, the Beach Boys represented everything that defined the next generation: youth, freedom, and the California dream. By the mid-1960s, their music had changed the sound of America, bringing surf harmonies and bold experimentation to the forefront. But for Connie, the shift wasn't just musical. It felt personal. In several candid interviews later in life, Connie admitted that she never quite understood the Beach Boys' hype. They were talented, yes, she said, but their style felt careless to me. I came from a time when every note, every lyric mattered. They made it seem like you could just roll out of bed, strum a guitar, and call it art. That critical perspective didn't sit well with fans of the band, or, reportedly, with the Beach Boys themselves. What started as a difference in artistic vision slowly evolved into mutual disdain. According to music historians, Connie and the Beach Boys first crossed paths during a 1965 recording event in Los Angeles. While most artists were eager to meet, the reigning pop queen, the Beach Boys frontman, Brian Wilson, was reportedly unimpressed. He viewed Connie as a product of an old system, a polished act from a bygone era. The feeling, it seems, was mutual. Connie, known for her professionalism and old-school discipline, found their casual studio behavior appalling. They came in late barefoot and with guitars out of tune, she once recalled with a shake of her head. It wasn't music. It was chaos. The turning point came when a magazine printed a quote attributed to one of the Beach Boys, calling Connie's music outdated pop for our parents' generation. When asked for comment, Connie didn't hold back. If that's what they think, she said, then I hope they enjoy their little waves, because trends come and go, but class never fades. The jab made headlines, sparking a brief but memorable feud. Although the Beach Boys never publicly responded, insiders claimed they were furious. In later interviews, when asked about female artists of the early pop era, they consistently avoided mentioning Connie's name, a silent but telling snub. Behind the tension, however, lay something more complex. Connie represented the discipline of pre-rock music, carefully crafted, cleanly produced, and emotionally restrained. The Beach Boys were the revolution, unpredictable, experimental, and anti-establishment. To her, their music symbolized the loss of an era she helped build. To them, she embodied the past they were trying to move beyond. Still, years later, Connie showed grace when reflecting on the conflict. They changed music in their own way, she said. I might not have liked it, but I can't deny their impact. It was a rare moment of reconciliation, showing that even old rivalries can mellow with time. Interestingly, decades later, Brian Wilson himself expressed admiration for her vocal control in a 2000 radio interview, calling her technically perfect. When asked about the old tension, Connie reportedly laughed. Well, she said, better late than never. Her feud with the Beach Boys wasn't born out of hatred as much as it was out of different values, one artist rooted in tradition, the other in rebellion. But in the grand story of music, both were vital. One built the foundation, the other broke the walls. And though their paths never truly crossed again, the clash between Connie Francis and the Beach Boys remains one of those fascinating then versus now moments, a reminder of how every generation of musicians must eventually face the one that follows. If there was ever a band that represented everything Connie Francis stood against in the evolution of music, it was the Rolling Stones. Wild, unpredictable, and unapologetically rebellious, the Stones embodied the cultural revolution of the 1960s, a movement that left traditional artists like Connie struggling to recognize the industry they once dominated. Connie Francis, with her refined stage presence and emotional precision, had come from an era where singers wore elegant gowns and spoke with poise. The Rolling Stones, on the other hand, swaggered onto stages in rumpled shirts, shouting lyrics about rebellion, heartbreak, and chaos. For Connie, their rise wasn't just a change in style, it felt like an invasion. In her later memoirs, Connie admitted that she couldn't stand the Stones during their early years. They didn't just want to make music, she wrote. They wanted to destroy everything that came before them, including people like me. Their paths crossed in London in the mid-1960s, when both acts were invited to perform on the same television broadcast. According to those who were there, Connie was appalled by the band's backstage behavior. They were loud, brash, and rude, she recalled. They smoked, cursed, and laughed through rehearsals while I was trying to focus. It was like being surrounded by chaos. Mick Jagger, already known for his flamboyant attitude, reportedly mocked her old-fashioned style, joking that she should sing one of those crying songs for the audience. Connie didn't laugh. I thought he was arrogant, she later said. Talent isn't an excuse for disrespect. After that encounter, she made no secret of her dislike for the band's image and influence. In interviews, she criticized their lyrics and stage performances for being vulgar and emotionally empty. While her words stirred controversy, they reflected the divide between two musical generations, one polished and restrained, the other raw and rebellious. Music journalists later described her comments as symbolic of the cultural clash between old Hollywood-style pop and the rock revolution. To many, Connie represented the last breath of innocence before the storm of sex, drugs, and rock and roll took over. And while her criticism might have seemed harsh, it was rooted in genuine conviction. We worked to make people feel hope, she once explained. They worked to shock them. That wasn't my kind of music. The Rolling Stones, for their part, seemed unfazed. Mick Jagger reportedly brushed off her remarks, saying in one interview, "Connie's from another planet, and that's fine. We're not singing for that planet anymore." The jab only deepened the divide, and from that moment, any hope of reconciliation vanished. Years later, however, Connie softened her view, at least a little. During a retrospective documentary on 1960s music, she acknowledged their enduring success. They lasted longer than anyone expected, she said with a smile. I guess rebellion sells. But even in her later reflections, she never changed her core belief. Music should lift the human spirit, not rebel against it. The Stones changed the rules, she said. But every time I turn on the radio, I still miss when melody mattered more than noise. The feud between Connie Francis and the Rolling Stones stands as one of the most iconic contrasts in pop history. The elegant songstress versus the kings of rock rebellion. It wasn't about jealousy or ego. It was about two different worlds colliding, each convinced it held the truth about what music should be. They were chaos, Connie once said, and I was order. Maybe that's why we could never see eye to eye. When Connie Francis first heard of the Beatles, she didn't pay much attention. At the time, she was already an established star with a string of hits, international fame, and an image polished to perfection. But by the early 1960s, the world had shifted, and four young men from Liverpool were leading that change. To many, they were a breath of fresh air. To Connie, they were a storm that swept away everything she and her peers had built. In interviews years later, Connie admitted that she had mixed feelings about the Beatles. They were charming, she said, but they changed the industry in ways I didn't love. She respected their talent, but despised the chaos their rise brought with it, the screaming fans, the media frenzy, and the shift from carefully composed music to what she called youth-driven noise. Her first encounter with the Beatles happened in the mid-1960s during a European award show. Connie was invited as a performer, while the Beatles were the night's biggest attraction. Backstage, she found herself surrounded by reporters who seemed more interested in the British band than in her decades-long career. "I suddenly realized I was no longer the center of attention," she recalled. "The world had moved on, and I wasn't sure I liked where it was going." According to sources close to her, Connie found their casual attitude toward fame unsettling. "They were informal to the point of being rude," she later said. "They treated stardom like a game. For me, it was sacred, a privilege, not a playground." The tension reportedly deepened when one of the band members made a joking remark about her old-fashioned music. Connie's response was sharp. "At least mine will still be played when you're old enough to understand your lyrics." The exchange made its way into the tabloids, fueling rumors of bad blood between Connie and the Fab Four. While the Beatles never publicly addressed it, insiders say that Paul McCartney later joked about the incident during an interview, calling it a generational misunderstanding. But beneath the tension was something more human: fear. Connie Francis represented the golden age of American pop, built on control, melody, and emotional storytelling. The Beatles represented liberation, rebellion, and a sound that shattered convention. To Connie, they weren't just a new band. They were the beginning of the end of her era. By 1967, the British invasion had fully taken over. Connie's traditional pop hits were fading from the charts, while the Beatles were experimenting with psychedelic sounds and global fame. She later admitted that the shift left her feeling alienated. "They made it impossible for artists like me to compete," she said. "Overnight, everything changed. The sound, the image, the expectations. It wasn't my world anymore." However, time has a way of softening even the strongest opinions. In a rare moment of reflection decades later, Connie acknowledged the Beatles' brilliance. "I didn't like them then," she confessed, "but I can see now what they did for music. They gave it freedom, even if that freedom pushed me aside." Her honesty resonated with fans who admired her courage to speak openly about the emotional side of change. She wasn't bitter, just truthful. For her, it was never about hating the Beatles as people, but mourning the loss of a musical world built on discipline and precision. "They broke the rules," she once said, "and maybe that's why they won. But every revolution has its casualties, and I was one of them." In the end, Connie Francis's candid feelings about the Beatles revealed more about the evolution of music than about rivalry itself. Her story showed the pain of an artist watching her kingdom evolve beyond recognition, and the grace of accepting it with wisdom rather than resentment.